Hello, everybody. Happy Friday on this short week. This is Finance Friday, the show where we transform your relationship with your money by giving you the information that you need to grow and protect your wealth. I'm Amy Novakovich. This is Ryan Wilson.
Hey, everyone.
Follow us on Twitter at Nova Wealth Management. Management's abbreviated MGMT. Follow us on Instagram, Nova Wealth Management. Our YouTube and our website has all our handles, novawealthmanagement.com. We are a little early today. We normally go live at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. But today we just wanted to get in before the bell closes.
Yep.
Ding, 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 ding at 4 p.m. So we wanted to be a little early today because we're talking about something that literally was just announced at 7:30 last night. I think the tweet came across.
Yeah.
That we are now putting tariffs on Mexico. So we wanted to really address this right now because I'm sure at some point everybody's kind of heard or
Yep.
I don't know.
At some point, you probably
I feel
heard.
like we're so inundated with it. I assume everybody has heard of it, but maybe they haven't. So if you haven't, just a real, I know we are early. We're trying to get in before the bell closes. Just like, a little sense of urgency, Johnny. But we are, we'll explain to you that tariffs are essentially additional fees on goods that are sold between countries. Yes?
Yes.
Yes. We're trying to break it down really, really, really basic. So when we are sending goods to China or we're getting goods from China, we're importing them, we are now paying an additional fee, a higher price on those goods, which affects how much we get from China, which affects how much they produce, which in turn hurts them and also kind of hurts us because we're paying more for items that we were paying not as much before. So we want to talk about how the tariffs are going to affect us, if any. We kind of touched on this in December.
Yeah, we've talked because the
long time.
War.
But man, in
like
the
last
last week,
term, has been going on for a while. But it's kind of the last month or so has kind of kicked back up because there's been a little bit of retaliatory back and forths, and we were close to a deal, and then they backed out of it. From what we're hearing, at least
from what we know,
we think we know. So that's kind of where it's all kind of come back up. And then now Trump is imposing tariffs starting June 10th, is what he said, and raising them
5% per month. Yes.
And so there's kind of reasons behind them. Is what he's showing. So
we're both trying to be so careful. I feel like you're tiptoeing. It's
so
okay.
Ultimately, the tariffs are not to. So tariffs can be used in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it can be to shelter domestic. So like if there's someone that sells something in the United States, they tax or tariff and import and make it more expensive so that it gives like a level playing field.
Yes, but at the same time, I think it's meant to be used as a tool just to get somebody's attention. Like we don't want this to be prolonged. We don't, because it could be bad if it's prolonged.
Right. So it's used in negotiations.
Right.
So they're using this trade war is ultimately that, China for years has been taking intellectual property from the United States and they haven't been doing anything about it. So the president is imposing tariffs, hoping to get them to kind of say, okay, well, we'll start cracking down so that we're not stealing from you and putting new kind of legislation in.
Well, when the original agreement with China was made, China was a totally different country. They were in a totally different spot, and they needed the help. And now China is getting close to being our size. Oh, I didn't even say share this out. See how distracted I am?
Yeah, I shared it.
You did?
You were talking, so I did it.
Share it out, everybody. Okay, keep going. You can just go.
So to your point, I feel like we're kind of jumping. This one's going to seem a little bit
but we're going to get right.
So what Amy was saying is that when China first imposed their tariffs, it was to kind of bolster their economy. So the idea that they can take in, extra money to grow their economy. Now, they're growing at a faster rate than we are, and soon will be kind of equal to us. And so I kind of look at it, and this may be a bad analogy, but trying to make it a little bit funny is how most baby boomers look at millennials. So
I haven't heard this yet.
So how I think of it is, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they're like, oh, everyone I feel like that's a little bit older has their opinions about millennials, but the idea is that like millennials just kind of take, and they don't want to. So
they don't want to work.
They don't want to work. So the idea is that China was like the child, and the U.S., the parent, allowed them to grow, and they kind of gave them what they needed to be able to grow and flourish. And now U.S. is threatening to kind of say, okay, well, we're going to lower
the U.S. is kind of like a parent,
like the parent to a millennial,
okay.
And it's saying, hey, we want to kind of take this away. We want to put in some new rules, and China is kind of throwing a fit, saying, well, we don't want to do that, so we're going to throw a fit and throw.
And so do millennials throw a fit when their parents?
I'm saying that's kind of how they're depicted.
Okay.
And
that
so.
Makes sense. I will happily pay more to level this lopsided playing field. Glad someone is cleaning this up. No need to watch fake news. Just watch you guys. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
Hey, Ed. Hey, guys.
So anyway, that's just kind of my analogy, and it was better in my head, I think. But the idea that they are, we're trying to put in new effects of saying, hey, you guys you can self-sustain now. You don't need us to bolster you. So we're kind of starting to rewind some of this, and it hasn't been done in a super long time. And so this is kind of the effect of something that's been overdue.
Correct. I think some of the arguments, some of the people that go back and forth say, okay, well, is tariffs the right way to go about it? I think a lot of people think that the contracts need to be renegotiated, the agreements, I say contracts, that's my world, but the agreements need to be renegotiated so that we can find a level playing ground with China. However, is tariffs the right way to go about it? For example, one of the things that I don't know if it's for every business, but I do know I have a client that has a factory, a manufacturing plant in China, and he knows that if he were going to have the plant in China, China has to own 51% of it. Mm-hmm. So that's how they're getting involved. That's the way it is. If you go build over there, they have to own 51% of it. So another idea might be like, if you're going to build here, China or Mexico or whatever, US needs to own 51% of it. Or, so there's different ideas being thrown out there as to how we could negotiate instead of tariffs. And the president thinks that this is the quickest way to get to an agreement. Whether you agree with it or not, I think we're not getting into that today. We're going to say, okay, well, tariffs seems to be the way he is going. How does this affect us? So let's get into some of the numbers instead of keep talking about, I think we've laid the groundwork of what tariffs are and what's going on. Okay, so the numbers are, you have it, the U.S. exports to China $120 billion.
And they import $540 billion.
We bring in $540 billion. Mm-hmm. So, fact, if there's tariffs imposed on both sides, it hurts China more than it hurts us because we buy more from them than they buy from us, to the tune of about 5 times more. Mm-hmm. So if it's the same percentage, for instance, right now we're imposing tariffs on 200 billion of their goods, mm-hmm. and they're imposing tariffs on 60 billion of our goods. So it's not level. China is getting more hurt than what we are getting hurt by. Where are we getting hurt? Steel, manufacturing, because it's affecting not just steel, other metals too, and agriculture. So those are 2 areas where we're going to see prices possibly increase in the short run. That's where we will be affected. And anybody in those industries will be affected.
Well, and it could be, it can be other industries, clothes and things like that, because when we import and ultimately and as of now, part of the tariffs is the idea that it evens the playing field as far as cost goes. So if we raise tariffs on China, then there will be other kind of avenues that we'll import from, and that will also hurt China. So the 540 billion we import will be less because of the fact that they're charging more for them, those costs to come in.
But then they're also hurting us in other ways. So for the first time in 15 years, visitors from China, so China tourism decreased for the first time in 15 years. So we are seeing this. Like I was on a call the other day with, it was a JP Morgan call. And actually they said the analogy of, okay, if I shoot a hole in the boat, we're all right. But it's like, but then I'm going to shoot a hole in the boat. And eventually you shoot so many holes in the boat, you both are going to sink. So nobody wants this to go on forever, right? So we're going to try to see a deal probably before the election is what I would guess.
Yeah.
But the election is over a year away. So the question is how long can this go, and how will our economy be affected, and how should your investments be affected? So we were having this huge discussion in the office today about, should we put on protection? Should we really think that this is going to be a prolonged thing, or no shooting holes in any boats? Yeah, Ryan works with boats. Yeah. I'm sorry. I did not pick that analogy because you were on. Absolutely not. By the way, I'm sorry. All you guys joining, there's a lot of people starting to hop on right now. Go ahead, share this out if you find this valuable. We're just going over economic facts, the numbers on what we send to China, what they send to us, and how it affects our economy, and what industries we're going to see prices go up. But what I was just saying was, if what was I just saying before he just... You see, now you set me off on my train of thought.
You're talking about putting protection on what we were talking about earlier.
Yes, what we were talking about earlier. So we were saying, do we try to protect investments? And in a sense, you're kind of trying to time the market, which is always what we say not to do, right? Because when you hop out and you hop back in, now you have to be right twice versus just trying to buy on the way down. Ryan's shaking his head like, yeah.
That's what we talk about all the time.
I know. However, I feel like very close to home is 5 months ago, where the market went down 20% because of this very talk, the same exact talk. So I'm just telling you, if you're in more aggressive investments, it might be time to just sit down and reevaluate your risk, which is what we're doing. We're trying to sit down with clients and reevaluate, say, what really is your risk? What really is your time frame? How diversified are you? What other investments do you own outside of investment accounts? Try to really sit down and take an inventory of your assets, because it's been 10 years since we've had like a prolonged downturn. Prolonged meaning like a year long. Mm-hmm. So it started in like March of 2008. And March 9th of 2009 was the bottom. So it went on for a year, guys. Everybody was like freaking out in December, and it was 12 weeks. Mm-hmm. And it rebounded right away. Imagine if this goes on for a year. People are going to really almost talk themselves into a recession. Because I was looking up some numbers. So like, for instance, TTC, which is Toro Company, there in the last week, their probability of default went up by 5 times what it was 1 week ago. They're 5 times more likely to default on any bonds that are out there just in the last week because of tariffs. Mm. So me as an investor, if I own Toro Company, I might go out and panic and sell it just hearing that. Mm. Okay, increased selling causes increased institutional selling, because now you've got these automatic computers that kick in and sell it, which then causes the whole sector to go down, which then causes less investment to go into the sector. So it's the snowball effect. But that's what I mean when I say we could talk ourselves into a recession. Numbers are good in the economy. And our economy is what now? $14 trillion a year? So guys, a 20% tariff on $60 billion in goods is like $6 a year, like to us. I mean, it is not a large number. It's more about the talk of this being prolonged and everybody kind of talking themselves into this recession of buying less and saving more, which causes rates to go down, which causes, it's this big cycle.
Yeah, no, I think it's possible. I think that
Ryan and I don't agree.
I just think that if you look at both sides of these kind of talks, I think is a better way of putting it, when you put words and negative connotation. But
yeah, we don't want to be negative.
These trade talks that are out there, I don't think it benefits either one of us for this to go on. And so
no, it does.
Eventually,
it definitely does not.
And honestly, I think that it hurts China more the longer it goes on. And so,
well, it does. That's for sure.
And they there's other things that they've threatened, and we're already 15 minutes in. I don't want to get too far into it, but there's other things that China has threatened to do, but a lot of them are empty threats, because a lot of them hurt their economy more than ours.
I'm reading the headlines on the TV. If you guys are like, what is she looking at? We still have the TV on. I really should have shut that.
Yeah, you should have. I did, but
I know. I turned it back on.
So anyway, I think that I think that it's something that, and I do think that Trump, if he wants to kind of clean off the dirt by the time the election cycle comes back around, it's going to have to be well before the end of this year, because the campaigning is going to start, at the end of the fall. So
it is, but by then the free fall could have begun. So, I mean, also like taking a look at Mexico. So they're our number 3 trading partner to us. We're their number 1, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we export to Mexico $265 billion. They import to us $346 billion. So, I mean, the numbers, again, are not like these huge numbers. Again, in a $14 trillion economy every year, by the way, these numbers, 346 billion, I mean, is just not a ton of money. However, I think more just the fighting and the uncertainty.
That's what gets everybody.
That's what gets everybody. It's not the numbers, because the numbers, the facts are that is.
And it's 5%. So he's imposing 5% and he's going to raise it. And it's more, and that's what shows that this isn't about a money thing. It's about, hey, Trump wants Mexico to help to keep, illegal immigrants that are from Central America going through Mexico and just coming into our borders. They're not really doing anything about it.
Right.
So he's saying, hey, we want to tighten this down. And it's kind of a way for him to kind of snap on it get their attention. It's mostly an attention thing, because 5% is not much at all.
Yes. So how are we going to be affected? So as of last month, and now the Consumer Confidence Index is something how you measure how you and me feel about the economy. Mm-hmm. It was the highest in 18 years. Okay. Unemployment is still at a 60-year low. 50-year low. I can't remember if it was 50 or 60-year low. A long time low. Okay. Now, get this number, and this is from the sources S&P Global. There has been 31 tariff talks. So just to give you guys an idea of how much this is really overblown in the media, did you guys know that in the last 35 years, if anybody knows this, I would love for you to comment. In the last 35 years, and I've been in this business 14. So in the last 35 years, tariffs have been mentioned, talked about, and threatened 31 times. Did anybody know that? Like, I don't think anybody even knows this.
And
this is not the first time in 30 years that tariffs have been mentioned. 31 times in 35 years.
Well, and tariffs have been added to Canada. There's like a list of, like, I think Sweden, tariffs have been raised in a bunch of countries, but there's only a few that they're making.
But this is the one that's really publicized. Yeah. And I think partially is because it's put on like Twitter. Like, I think that is part of the problem. But the other thing is that 78% of the time, the market has actually gone up in the following 12 months, 78% of the time after a tariff has been announced. And then you look at the worst performing sector on tariffs, it's energy. So if you own a ton of energy stocks, you definitely want to sit down and reevaluate your risk and your goals of your portfolio and how diversified you are, because energy stocks are like these high income payers that people invest in because of the income. And I just want to tell you these are not recommendations, right? We're just talking here. I'm just saying you might want to sit down with your professional, whoever that may be, and reevaluate if you're in a lot of energy stocks, because we're in a tariff war. No, I don't want to say war.
Talks.
Thank you. A tariff talk.
Peaceful.
And energy historically has been the worst performer when tariffs are mentioned. So just look out for that. Also, the Tax Foundation, this was my source for that, said that if we were to have $37.5 billion in tariffs, which right now we're not there yet with China, they're only putting a 10% tariff on $60 billion. But if we were to get to $37.5 billion in tariffs on us, it would lower our gross domestic product, or GDP, which is our growth. Again, the numbers are telling us this isn't a big deal, but everybody else talking about it is saying it's a big deal, which makes the market make it a big deal, which makes it a big deal to accounts. So it's just this big snowball effect. So we're just telling you to kind of reevaluate your risk and definitely look forward to the next 12 months instead of this might not be a short-term thing. And I've always come on this thing and been like, buy into even in December, I was saying like buy into the weakness.
Right.
In February of last year, market went down 10% in 5 years. I said, buy into the weakness. I think the time before that was August of 2017. I was like, buy. But this time I'm not saying, like, I don't know if it's necessarily a buy time. It could be a prolonged thing. It's just kind of out of our control right now. and you don't agree, and that's okay.
No, and I'm not saying that. I think that
you're just quiet.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking in this conversation. I do think that one thing is if you are a younger investor.
And I know, I get that.
And I
get that if you're a younger investor and you're dollar cost averaging.
Yeah. If you are adding money every month.
There you go. That's what dollar cost
then
is.
You're probably okay. Again, not a recommendation.
The beginning of the end.
But,
not at all what I'm saying, Ryan.
But the idea is that if you are buying, and if it's going down every month, you're buying lower, you're buying lower, you're buying lower. Yeah, eventually, totally. It will turn, and then those low buys.
And you will buy on the low buys.
Yeah. So you have a better chance. You have a better chance of catching those lows if you do that, rather than kind of backing out now and trying to get back in. Now,
I'm glad you clarified.
So I think that's one thing that you definitely talk to somebody.
Right. That's all I'm really saying.
We talk about much different clients that we have different opinions on, and that's okay. It's good. It adds good conversation, and ultimately, I think we get better results that way. So I think constructive conversations are good, and it's okay to disagree.
Right.
Remember that, USA.
So
we can still be friends. If you disagree, we can all be friends.
That's so true. That is very true. So yes, Ryan, not a time to panic. All I'm saying is a time to kind of reevaluate risk and see where you are diversified wise. How much real estate do I have? How much do I have in mutual funds? How much do I have in stocks? And yes, if you are putting away money on a consistent basis, you're going to hit the bottom. You're going to average out over time. So that is the best way by far long-term to win is to add money consistently over time, because then you're not timing anything. You're going to buy at the bottom sometimes, which is great. Mm-hmm. So you're not stuck in this position of what do I do? Do I hop out? Do I hop back in? Right. All this stuff. Like, all I'm saying is sit down and reevaluate your risk. That's all. Yeah. Like, as my friend Ed, who actually joined this, he always says, it's not going to snow in June or July. I think he says July. It won't keep snowing in July. Meaning in February, when we're getting dumped on in snow, not in Florida, but for my Wisconsinites, we're getting dumped on in snow. It feels like it will never end. And there's not going to be 12 inches of snow in July. It's just, it won't continue forever. But I'm just saying, reevaluate your risk so that you don't make poor decisions when the market really does swing. That's really my fundamental.
Yeah, I think that's good advice.
Okay.
Even though it's not.
We'll agree on that. Okay. So I hope we gave you guys a lot of good info. Share this out. If you have any questions, please feel free to message us through our website. And you guys know where to find us on the comments on this too. So have an awesome weekend. And we will see you
next week.
Hopefully there will be more tariff talk.
Yeah.
See you later. Bye.
Bye, everyone.